Good morning, dear children. Today we are going to start lesson number 4, The Great Train Journey. Dear children, this is the chapter which is written by Ruskinbond. First of all, we'll study something about the author of the chapter. Dear children, as we read this chapter, please keep your books open with you. Ruskin Bond is an Indian author of British descent. He is an Indian author. He was born in Kasauli in Himachal Pradesh in 1934. He lives in Landore, a hill station in the Himalayas near Mussoorie. He has written many short stories, essays, novels, and books for children. The Room on the Roof was his first novel, written when he was 17. Bond was awarded the Padma Shri in 1999. This is about the author of the chapter. This chapter is written by Ruskin Bond. There are some difficult words given in this chapter. Some of them I have written on the board, and some of the words, as I explain the chapter, I will give you the meanings of the difficult words. Concealed. Concealed means hidden or covered up. Railway siding. It is a short stretch of tracks to allow trains to pass each other. We on the railway tracks we can see at one place you can see many tracks so that the trains can change their directions. Shabby means scruffy, and stationary means not moving. Dear children, let us start our chapter. Here, this is a story of a boy who was very fond of trains, and once he just went away from his home and he went to the railway station and saw a train. It was a goods train, a train which carried things from one place to another. And let us see what happened further. Suraj waved to a passing train and kept waving until only the spiraling smoke remained. Suraj was very fond of waving, was fond of looking the trains. He was waving his hands to the trains, and he kept on waving until the train passed from there. Only the spiraling smoke. Spiraling means a shape of continuous curving lines. We know that the smoke, when it goes up in the air, it goes in a curving way. And till the smoke remained there, he used to wave his hand. He liked waving the trains. He wondered about the people in them and about where they were going and what it would be like there. And whenever he was waving the trains, he was looking people sitting inside the train. He was very shocked what people were doing in the train or what they were going. And when the train had passed, leaving behind only the hot, empty track, Suraj was lonely. And when train used to leave the track, he was just lonely, all alone at that place. He was a little lonely now. His hands in his pockets, he wandered along the railway track, kicking at loose pebbles and sending them down the bank. Now the train left the railway track and he was all alone at the track. And he just put his hands in the pocket and he was wandering, means aimlessly he was walking there and he was just kicking the pebbles. We know that both the sides of the railway track there are many pebbles, and he was just walking through that way aimlessly and he was kicking the stones, pebbles. Soon there were other tracks or railway siding, a stationary goods train, and very soon he saw other railway tracks on the station and a railway siding. Railway siding We know it is a short stretch of track to allow trains to pass. And a stationary goods train. Stationary goods train means stationary means not moving. The train which is not moving. Goods train. Goods train means the train which carry things from one place to another. It was standing on the track. Suraj walked the length of the goods train. The carriage doors were closed and there were no windows. He couldn't see inside. As he was passing through that way, through the railway track, he saw one stationary goods train was standing there, and he just saw the carriage doors and all the doors were closed and he couldn't see inside the carriage. He looked around to see if he was observed, and then, satisfied that he was alone, began trying the doors. He looked here and there and he saw that nobody is observing him, nobody is paying attention to him. So he just tried to open the doors of the carriage. He was almost at end of the train when a carriage door gave way to his thrust. Thrust means to push or to drive. So he was almost at the end of the train when a carriage door gave way to his thrust. As he was pushing, he was trying to open the door. Finally, when he reached at the end of the train, he could open one door. It was dark inside the carriage of the train. It was completely dark. Suraj stood outside in the bright sunlight. Suraj was standing outside and it was completely bright. Peering into the darkness, trying to recognize bulky, shapeless objects. Peering means looking closely, staring at something, looking closely at something. Peering into the darkness, as he was standing outside the train and he could open the door, and inside the carriage it was complete dark, and very closely he was looking what the objects were kept in the carriage. Trying to recognize bulky means large, shapeless objects which he could not recognize. He stepped into the carriage and felt around. Finally, he stepped into the carriage. He moved into the carriage and he touched and felt what the objects were kept there. The objects were crates, and through the cross section of woodwork he felt straw. The objects which were kept inside the carriage were crates. Crates are the boxes to keep like fruits or vegetables in them. And through the cross section of woodwork, the crates were made of wood, and inside the woodwork there was little space, and through that space he felt straw, the dry grass. He opened the door and the sun streamed into the compartment, driving out the musty darkness. He opened the door of the carriage and sun streamed. Streamed means flew inside into the compartment. He got little light in the compartment, driving out the musty darkness. Driving means removing out the musty darkness, means unclean darkness was removed. Suraj sat down on a packing case, his chin cupped in his hands. Suraj sat down inside the carriage. He sat down on the packing case, on one of the crates. He sat. These crates were packed. His chin cupped into his hands. You can see in the picture, he kept his hands on his chins like this. The school was closed for summer holidays, and he had been wandering about all day and still did not know what to do with himself. It was summer holidays for Suraj, and he was not knowing what to do during these holidays. He was aimless, so simply he was wandering here and there. The carriage was bare of all sort of glamour. Glamour means the attraction. This railway carriage was not covered. Bare means it was there was no attraction at all in that carriage. Passing trains fascinated him. Moving trains, crowded trains, shrieking trains, panting trains, all fascinated him. Fascinated means attracted him. All the other trains which were passing on the other tracks attracted him because the train, the carriage in which he was, it was very boring. So he was attracted by other trains. These were the moving trains, the crowded trains, number of people were sitting in those trains. Shrieking trains, shrieking means high pitched sound. The trains, we know that when train whistle it makes lot of sound. Panting trains, panting means taking hard breath. All fascinated him, all the trains attracted him. But this smelly, dark compartment filled him only with gloom and more loneliness. But the carriage in which he was sitting filled him with gloom. Gloom means sad. He was very sad in that compartment, and more loneliness, and he felt very lonely in that compartment. He felt he was all alone in that compartment. He did not really look gloomy or lonely. He looked fierce at times when he glared out at people from under his dark brows, but otherwise he usually wore a content look, and no one could guess just how deep his thoughts were. He was not only sad or lonely, he looked fierce. Fierce means very violent and angry. When he glared out, glared means stared angrily outside at people. When he saw other people, he felt very angry. But otherwise, he usually wore a contented look. But he was just he wanted to show that he was satisfied, and no one could guess just how deep his thoughts were. Only he himself, the Suraj, could understand his thoughts, his feelings. Perhaps if he had company, some fun could be had in the carriage. He was thinking that if somebody is with him in the carriage, he would have got more fun in the carriage. If there had been a friend with him, someone like Ranji. Now he was missing his best friend Ranji. He was thinking that if his friend would have been here, he would have enjoyed more. He looked at the crates. He was always curious about things that were bolted or nailed down or in some way concealed from him. He looked at the crates. Many crates were kept in the carriage, and something was kept in those crates, and he was very curious. He was very eager to know about the things which were bolted or nailed, which were concealed, means kept secret. Concealed means the things which were kept secret from him and which were nailed or bolted. He wanted to just open them and discover the things kept inside. Things like parcels and locked rooms and carriage doors and crates. He was always curious to find out all these which were kept secret from him. He went from one crate to another, and soon his perseverance was rewarded. And he went one crate to another. He was so curious, he was so eager to find out what was kept inside those crates. So very soon his perseverance means his continuous efforts, his continuous work was rewarded. He means finally he could find out what was kept in those crates. The cover of one hadn't been properly nailed down. In one of the crate, the cover was not nailed down properly. Suraj got his fingers under the edge and raised up the lid. Then Suraj just put his fingers under the edge and he tried to open the lid. Lid means cover of the crate. Absorbed in this operation, he did not notice the slight shudder that passed through the train. Absorbed in this operation means taking interest in this operation, busy with this operation of taking out the lid of the crate. And he did not notice the slight shudder. Slight shudder means a slight shivering that passed through the train. He plunged his hands into the straw and pulled out an apple. Finally, he could get something from those crates. Crates were full with apples and he got one apple in his hand. It was dark, ruby red apple and it lay in the dusty palm of Suraj's hand like some gigantic precious stone, smooth and round and glowing in the sunlight. It was dark red apple and it lay in the dusty palm of Suraj, because he was just trying to touch the things and he wanted to discover something. So with all the straw and with dust, his hands got dirty, and in his hands the red apple looked like gigantic means huge, like a huge precious stone he got in his hand. It was smooth and round and glowing in the sunlight. Suraj looked up out of the doorway and thought he saw a tree walking past the train. When he looked up out of the doorway, from the door, when he looked outside, he noticed that some of the trees walking past, some of the trees were walking, and we know when we feel like this, we know that trees cannot walk. But when we are in any vehicle, in the bus or in the train, when vehicle moves, it seems that all the trees, plants are walking backward. He dropped the apple and stared. The apple was in his hand. He just dropped it down and he stared. He looked continuously outside. There was another tree and another, all walking past the door with increasing rapidity. Means when he looked out, he noticed that one tree, then another means all the trees were walking past. Suraj stepped forward but lost his balance and fell on his hands and knees. He just stepped forward towards the door but lost his balance and he fell on his hands and knees. He could not stand up. He lost his balance and he was fallen down. In the carriage itself, the floor beneath him was vibrating. The wheels were clattering on the rails. Clattering means rattling sound, the metallic sound. Now he realized that the train is moving. The train is passing through that way. The floor beneath him was vibrating because the train was moving, so it was vibrating. The carriage was swaying. Swaying means moving slowly. Swaying means moving slowly. As train started, the carriage was moving slowly. The trees were running now, swooping past the trains and the telegraph poles joined them in the crazy race. Now he noticed that all the trees were running. Now as train was taking its speed, the trees were also running now very fast, and he could see that swooping past the train. Swooping past means moving rapidly downwards, and the telegraph poles joined them in the crazy race. It seems that all these trees are touching the telegraph poles. Crouching on his hands and knees, Suraj stared out of the open door and realized that the train was moving fast, moving away from his home and puffing into the unknown. Crouching on his hands and knees. Bending down, sitting on the hands and knees is called a crouching position. And Suraj stared. He looked out of the open door and he realized that the train was moving now, and it was moving faster and moving away from his home. He crept cautiously to the door and looked out. Crept means he just walked cautiously, means very carefully to the door. Towards the door he crept and he looked out. The ground seemed to rush away from the wheels. He couldn't jump. Was there, he wondered, any way to stopping the train? Now he was sure that the train is moving fast, and he was just thinking to jump out of the train, but it was not possible. Then he was thinking about to stopping the train, but that was also not possible for him. He looked around the compartment again. Only crates of apples. He would not starve. That was one consolation. Only when he looked around the carriage, he could see only the crates, and he was having one satisfaction, one sympathy for him, that he would not starve. He will not suffer with hunger because there were apples. He picked up the apple he had dropped and pulled a crate nearer to the doorway. He just picked up the apple which he dropped down, and now he just pulled one crate near the door and he sat on it. Sitting down, he took a bite from the apple and stared out of the open door. He just took one bite from the apple and he stared out of the door. Dear children, we'll continue rest of the chapter in the next video. Thank you.